After some intense digging, I've uncovered 3 true clown horror stories. Each tale is packed with suspense, eerie twists, and a sense of dread that will make you second-guess the presence of clowns in every dark corner. So get ready to be on the edge of your seat. This eerie story begins when I visited the asylum to see my friend, who was battling schizophrenia. We had once shared a close bond, but now when I tried to reconnect with him, his eyes were vacant, and he barely recognized me. It was as if I were a ghost to him. Heartbroken and frustrated, I turned to leave, feeling a deep sense of loss. That's when I overheard a whisper by the exit. A group of people were talking in Spanish, and 2 words stood out: payaso clown and sacerdote priest. The words seemed odd, like a joke, but there was something unsettling about their tone. Driven by a mix of curiosity and unease, I followed the whispers outside and ended up near an old church. As I stepped inside, I immediately felt a chill in the air, a heaviness that made my skin crawl. The church, usually a place of solace, now felt like a prison, and that's when I saw him. In the center of the church, a clown sat strapped to a wooden chair. His back was turned to me at first, but then, with a sudden jerk, he whipped his head around. My heart stopped. It was Needles Kane, the infamous deranged killer who wore a grotesque clown mask made from the skin of his victims. Kane was no ordinary murderer. He drove an ice cream truck, but it wasn't filled with treats. Inside, his freezer held the frozen bodies of men, women, and children. No one was safe. A priest stood before him, chanting in an ancient language, throwing holy water and curses at Kane. The atmosphere in the church was suffocating, as if something dark and malevolent had taken over. The priest's voice grew louder, but nothing seemed to work. Suddenly, the candles around us flickered and went out, plunging us into total darkness. The silence that followed was unbearable, and then the chaos erupted. In the pitch-black church, the sound of chains snapping, flesh tearing, and screams filled the air. Kane's laughter, like a twisted melody, echoed through the darkness. I stumbled blindly, bumping into what felt like lifeless bodies, their cold skin sending a shiver through my spine. It was a nightmare come to life. And then I saw it. 2 glowing eyes pierced the darkness. They weren't flashlights and they weren't candles. They were Kane's eyes, glowing with pure malice, locked onto me. My pulse raced and every instinct screamed for me to run. But I couldn't move fast enough. As I tripped over something, perhaps a body, perhaps not, I felt the blood on my hands as I struggled to push myself forward. Finally, I broke free from the nightmare and burst out into the sunlight. I gasped for air, but the relief was short-lived. I was the only one who had made it out alive. The horror I had witnessed was something I could never erase from my mind. I never reported what happened. I couldn't. The terror of Kane finding me, hunting me down, was too great. Even now, as I sit here typing this, I hear it, the haunting melody of an ice cream truck outside my window. I know he's out there. He knows where I am. Never trust the ice cream man. He's always watching. A teenage girl, eager for the extra cash, took on a babysitting job for a wealthy family in their grand Newport Beach mansion. The house was enormous, with endless hallways and rooms that seemed to stretch on forever. The father, a stern man with a commanding presence, gave her strict instructions to stay in a specific room after putting the children to bed. He warned her not to wander through the house, especially in the dark. The mansion was far too big, and he made it clear that she should avoid exploring. She nodded, a bit nervous but eager to settle in. After tucking the kids in, she made her way to the designated room, a lavish, dimly lit space filled with plush furniture and ornate decor. She turned on the TV, hoping to pass the time until her shift was over. But something in the room caught her eye, a lifelike clown statue standing eerily in the corner, its painted grin frozen in an unsettling smile. At first, she tried to dismiss it, telling herself it was just a piece of artwork. But the longer she stared at it, the more its presence unnerved her. The eyes of the clown seemed to follow her, no matter where she moved. She tried to focus on the TV, but the feeling of being watched only grew stronger. Unable to shake the feeling of dread, she picked up the phone and dialed the father's number. When he answered, she tried to sound calm, but her voice trembled. "There's a clown statue in the room, and it's freaking me out. Could I maybe move to another room?" The father's response was immediate, urgent. "Take the kids and go to the neighbors. Immediately." Call 911 and then call me back." Fear coursed through her veins. She didn't ask why. She simply grabbed the kids, her hands shaking as she led them next door. The weight of the situation settled heavily on her chest. Once they were safe, she dialed the father again, her voice cracking with panic. "What's going on? What's happening?" The father's voice on the other end was cold, unsettlingly calm. "We don't own a clown statue," he said flatly. "The kids have been complaining about a clown watching them at night, but we thought they were just having nightmares." Her blood ran cold. The statue she had seen, the one that had been so lifelike, wasn't a statue at all. It was something far worse. The police arrived soon after. When they searched the mansion, they made a horrifying discovery. Hidden away in one of the many rooms was the intruder, a homeless man disguised as a clown who had been living in the house for weeks. He'd managed to survive unnoticed, blending into the vast mansion's shadows. At night, he would sneak into the children's rooms, watching them as they slept. But when the babysitter had entered the TV room, he had frozen, posing as the statue to avoid detection. The terror she felt that night was only the beginning. The realization that the clown had been right there, only a few feet away from her. Watching and waiting, it haunted her every waking moment. And it wasn't just the clown mask she'd seen, but the cold, calculating eyes of the man who had hidden in plain sight. The house was no longer a safe haven. It was a prison. And the clown statue, it was the mask of a monster who had been living among them all along. One crisp October night, a high school senior named Megan was asked to house sit for her aunt and uncle, who lived on the outskirts of a small, carnival-loving town. Their property was a sprawling estate, complete with a private lake and an abandoned circus tent in the backyard, a relic from a traveling show that had passed through decades ago. Megan's aunt warned her to stay inside the house after dark. "The tent's just an eyesore now," she said with a nervous laugh. "You don't want to wander in there. The floorboards are unstable." Megan dismissed the warning as typical adult overcaution. After all, it was just an old tent. That evening, once the sun had dipped below the horizon, she settled into the living room to binge her favorite true crime series. Around midnight, the house's old pipes groaned, and Megan heard a faint sound like laughter, high-pitched and childlike. She froze, her eyes darting toward the darkened windows that overlooked the backyard. The carnival tent loomed in the moonlight, its faded red and white stripes flapping lightly in the breeze. Curiosity got the better of her. Armed with a flashlight, she slipped into her jacket and stepped outside, the cool air prickling her skin. The laughter grew louder as she approached the tent, now accompanied by the faint tinkling of a music box tune. Pushing aside the heavy, dusty flaps of the tent, Megan stepped inside. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing an assortment of crumbling props. Tattered costumes, shattered mirrors, and faded posters of grinning clowns. She was about to leave when she noticed a pristine, brightly colored jack-in-the-box sitting in the center of the tent. Compelled, she crouched down and began to turn the crank. The cheerful tune played, growing louder and more shrill with each twist. Then it stopped. The box didn't open. The laughter behind her was no longer faint. Spinning around, Megan's flashlight caught a face painted white with crimson lips stretched impossibly wide. The clown loomed over her, its yellowed teeth bared in a grotesque smile. It was wearing a patchwork suit that seemed to blend into the shadows, the frayed edges of its gloves caked in grime. But its eyes were human, and they were locked on hers. Megan stumbled back, dropping the flashlight. The beam spun wildly, casting fleeting glimpses of other figures, more clowns, hidden among the shadows, all watching her. Their bodies moved with a jerky, unnatural rhythm, like puppets on invisible strings. She bolted, her scream trapped in her throat. As she raced back to the house, she heard the music box tune again, this time louder, echoing from the tent. When she slammed the door shut behind her, the lights in the house flickered. The laughter was inside now. Frantic, Megan grabbed her phone to call the police, but the screen displayed a single message: "You're next in the act." The next morning, her aunt and uncle returned to an eerily quiet house. The police found no sign of Megan, just the flashlight, left on the floor of the tent, still faintly glowing. And in the center of the tent, the jack-in-the-box had finally popped open. Inside was a painted porcelain doll with Megan's terrified face. At this point, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more gripping stories. Hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest content. We appreciate your support.